If you want readers to fall in love with your cozy series, you gotta make them fall in love with your sleuth. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fiction Technician. If you haven't been here before, my name is Jane and I am a writer of historical cozy mysteries. And right now we are deep in a video series on how to design and start writing your cozy mystery series. Today is an episode I've been looking forward to because we're going to talk about how to design your sleuth. So designing a cozy sleuth, in many ways, it's just like designing any other character. You're going to give them some quirks, some flaws, some backstory. But there are a few things that are of particular interest when designing a cozy sleuth. There are three things we're going to talk about here today, and you don't want to be thinking of these things separately. They kind of go together, and when you get them really working in concert, you can have a great, memorable sleuth. The first thing that I like to think about when designing a new cozy sleuth is, what are her investigative skills? We know she's going to be smart and resourceful, but does she have anything else to bring to the table? Sherlock Holmes had his encyclopedic knowledge of many, many subjects. Sean Spencer of Psych has a photographic memory. In Elizabeth Peters' Amelia Peabody series, our sleuth has the determination and the social status to force anybody to talk to her. And in Sujata Massey's Perveen Mystery series, well, one of Perveen's investigative skills is actually just that she's female. She lives in 1920s India, which is a very gendered society. And so by simply being a woman, Perveen can enter these exclusively female spaces and develop camaraderie with female suspects and witnesses that a male investigator could simply never reach. When you're trying to develop investigative skills for your sleuth, there are a few places that it's helpful to start looking. First, you can start with her job. Her job may be related to the hook you chose for the series or not, but either way, she probably needs some way to pay the bills. So she probably has some skills that she has developed for that job. If she's an artist, she might have a really sharp eye for visual details. If she's a banker, she might have a lot of information about how financial matters work, and she might know how to access some private data. And if she's a teacher, well, she might just have a really well-tuned bullshit meter. Another place you can look is her interpersonal skills. So all of us, we all have ways that we try to get what we want from other people. Sometimes we do it by trying to connect with another person, or sometimes we do it via tit for tat. I do something for you and you do something for me. Sometimes we do it by manipulation and deceit. So when she's navigating her ordinary life, how does she try to get what she wants from people? And how could she possibly reapply those skills to interrogating suspects and trying to get information? And another thing you can do is simply start from the skill you want her to have and then come up with a logical reason for her to have that skill. So let's say that you really want her to have that sharp recall of visual details, but she's not an artist and it doesn't really go with her background in any way. Well, let's take a look actually at two characters from cozy TV shows that both had different reasons for having that kind of precise visual recall. First, we've got Sean Spencer of Psych. Sean has a photographic memory that he was trained to develop by his police officer father. And then we've got Adrian Monk of Monk. Monk has obsessive compulsive disorder, which means that he just kind of can't help but zero in on those little visual details. Figuring out a reason for your sleuth to have the investigative skill that you want can be a great way to find their comic perspective, which is our second element here. So the comic perspective is a term that comes from John Voorhouse's book, The Comic Toolbox. And it's the character's unique way of looking at the world, which differs in a clear and substantial way from the normal worldview. So if you've been around this channel since the beginning, you've heard me talk about comic perspective before. And if you stick around, you're going to hear about it again, because it is my favorite tool for writing funny characters. It can also be used for dramatic characters, and if you don't believe me, you can check out my video on Downton Abbey, where I showed how the characters' comic perspectives led to a lot of drama in season 3. But right now, we're talking about the funny, which is often a big part of cozy mysteries. So I think there's this misconception that writing funny means you have to come up with a lot of clever wordplay, maybe some scintillating, snarky dialogue. You always have to be on your toes coming up with new jokes. Well, the comic perspective is going to help you tell the same joke about a character over and over and over and have it be consistently funny. Your character is kind of going to be organically funny. They're going to kind of do it on their own. By which I don't mean that I'm one of those writers who hears my characters talk to me and dictate the plot. That's just not my process. I mean that the logic of the character's humor is contained within their comic perspective. Once you know their comic perspective, you're going to know kind of intuitively how they'll respond to different situations. And their responses will often be very funny because they are so true to the character. So we're going to look at the intro to the first season of Monk, and we're going to see how indeed it does tell us the same joke over and over and is funny every time. So here the joke is, Adrian Monk is so obsessive compulsive, he sterilizes his toothbrush. Adrian Monk is so obsessive compulsive, he vacuums his ceiling. Adrian Monk is so obsessive compulsive, he can't stand for an umbrella to be turned around the wrong way. Adrian's comic perspective is his obsessive compulsive disorder. It's his perspective. It's the lens through which he views the world. And what makes it comic is that it's off. It's askew. It's not the way other people view the world. So this was just the intro, but as the writers send Adrian off to investigate cases, they will have a very easy time dropping him into situations where they can tell us that exact same joke and have it feel really fresh and organic and deeply funny. So here the joke is, Adrian Monk is so obsessive compulsive, he can't stand for these nuclear weapons to be unevenly assembled. He has to put them all together so they'll be even. Let's look at a few other comic perspectives from Cozy History. So Sean Spencer's comic perspective on Psych is sort of aggressive irresponsibility. You remember we talked about his father trained him to have a photographic memory because he wanted Sean to work in law enforcement. Well, Sean resents this deeply, and so he won't even admit to having this ability. He instead pretends to be psychic so that he can hide it and thus avoid responsibility. In the Amelia Peabody series, Amelia's comic perspective is, I'm in charge. This is funny because she's a Victorian noblewoman, but instead of being shy and retiring, Amelia is large and in charge. She's in charge of her husband's Egyptological excavations. She's in charge of other people's love lives, and she's definitely in charge of solving murders way better than the police can do it. And in my upcoming novella, Murder Mr. Hamilton, my protagonist Lucy's comic perspective is modern woman. This isn't comic in comparison to the reader's perspective, but since Lucy is trapped in the 19th century, it is comic in relation to the perspectives of everyone around her. So I don't really ever have to work very hard to think of funny bits for Lucy. I just send her out to investigate the case. I have her act the way a modern woman would, have her express herself the way a modern woman would, and it is very funny because of the reactions of the other characters who find her strange and perhaps a little unsettling. If you feel like these tips will help you construct a really fun, cozy sleuth, please let me know by giving this video a like, and then let's talk about the third aspect of cozy sleuths, their long-term goals. So in any particular book, your sleuth's goal is going to be solving the mystery, and that's fine, but it is in some way a little distant from her. Mysteries are kind of unique in that they are sort of about other people's problems. As your sleuth goes out to find clues and catch the killer, she is mostly going to be dealing with the emotions, actions, and fates of people other than herself and her closest intimates. And if that's all she's showing up for, she's gonna feel a little bland, a little blank. So you want to make sure that she has some long-term goals that can be sort of developed over the series. Either long-term personal goals or long-term professional goals. So let's take a look at the long-term goals of Adrian and Sean and see how they dovetail with their investigative skills and comic perspectives. Adrian's long-term goal is to catch the killer who murdered his wife Trudy 7 years ago. This really dovetails nicely with the other aspects of his personality because his investigative skills come from the hyper-focus of his obsessive-compulsive disorder, and that obsessive-compulsive disorder became extremely acute during the trauma following Trudy's death. So it's really a nice, tight little package, giving us a detective with both the way and the reason to detect. As for Sean, well, like I said, he likes to behave irresponsibly, so he won't actually admit to any long-term goals. But as the series continues, we begin to see that he has a long-term goal of winning his father's respect. And again, this dovetails with the other aspects of his personality. His investigative skills come from the relationship with his father. Remember, his father trained him to have a photographic memory. This caused Sean a lot of resentment and really caused him to develop this highly irresponsible comic perspective, which sadly stands in the way of him mending that relationship the way he really wants to. If you enjoyed this video, a like is the best compliment. And please subscribe because next week we're going to be having a ton of fun digging into the design for your cozy love interest. Check out